Hi, today we're going to add JavaScript functionality and JavaScript logic on top of our Wized and Webflow application. And this video is a whole beginner course. What the heck is JavaScript? Why all of a sudden do I have to write code in Wized? What's going on? And then how you actually write that, and you don't need to know anything about JavaScript. Or even about Wized, we're going to start from scratch, and it will be easy, and you'll be able to understand it, and what the benefit of it is, and how to do that. And after this video, you will be able to write JavaScript yourself inside of your Wized and Webflow web applications. So let's get right started. So what I want to do is, I already built this example for the original Learn Wized in 1 hour video. And this is the list where we can check and uncheck items, and they're going to be sorted. So what I want to do is I want to add some text in here that changes based on a condition. So let's say, let's first of all say, if everything is unchecked, just like that, I want to say, let's start checking those items or something like this. And then if, let's say, 4 of them are checked, it will say you have completed 4 tasks. Or it could even say how much? Two tasks are still need to be done, or something like this. So we're going to get data from the array and combine it with a specific message if a condition is met. And then if everything is checked, we can say congratulations, good job, or something like that. So we have 3 different conditional types, and we somehow need to be able to look at this list and figure out how many are checked or not. And yeah, this is why we need JavaScript. So JavaScript is a programming language, and it is the only programming language that your computer can understand. Now, if you heard about things like React or something like this, know that React is not really, it is a language, but it's not really a language that your browser uses. If you're writing React, you're writing something called JSX, and you're using tools that actually compile or convert your JSX into JavaScript. So no matter what framework you're using, no matter what you're doing, at the end of the day, you need to turn it into JavaScript. Otherwise, your browser can't use it, can't work with it. Now, we have WebAssembly, but I'm not going to go into that. So ordinary, your browser cannot handle anything that is not JavaScript. Besides WebAssembly, the nerds, the code nerds, don't hate me on this. I mentioned WebAssembly. But generally, only JavaScript is allowed on the browser. So Wized allows us to write JavaScript. It is actually the only NoCode tool that requires you to write JavaScript. If you joined Wized thinking it was NoCode, it's not true. Wized is code. But Wized is so easy code that it is almost like NoCode. But, you have to write a little bit of code. And actually, sometimes even a little bit more than a little bit. But Wized made it so easy that everybody all of a sudden now can be a programmer and can write code if that person is willing to put in the effort in learning those few little principles that are essential. And we're going to go together through them and learn those principles. So let's start. So the first thing is we want those texts to be dynamic. From the original video, you already learned that if you want that dynamic, you can either do X-ray or click the plus and create a new action for this item. Now what I can do is I can just simply go and set text for this specific heading item. And, I can write return. You always have to write return because Wized in here is doing a function because it's a framework, right? So you always need to return a statement. If I'm just going to write, hey, it will not return anything, right? Because in JavaScript, we need to write return for the value we want to return. This is where already the first lesson starts. What I can also do, I can also write something like const, which just means I define a value. So let's say I have const hello equals hey. And now if I write return hello, it will return hey. Because let's look into this. I do const. Const will define a value. This is basically like a variable here. This hello is the name of a data set. So we have this hello. Let's actually do hello data set. We're going to use NoCode language today. So I have my hello data set. And the value, what means equal, is I'm setting the value of the hello data set to be hey. So I have const will define this. I have hello data set equals hey. So the variable, it's not a variable, but think of it like a variable. The data set, hello data set, will contain the value of hey. It's like in Wized when your v.iterator contains the value of 0 or whatever. So the variable, which is not a variable, the data set, hello data set, will contain the value of hey. So if I return hello data set, it will return the value of hey. And as you can see, if I would remove the return statement, it will not do anything because I'm not asking the code to return a specific value. In JavaScript, we need to return a specific value. So if I write hello, return hello dataset, I will return the value that I defined up here. Now, what I can also do is I can add a plus, and I can do hey, and let's hard code Wized in here, just like that, Wized. Now I can use the plus to merge two types of data together. I can do the value of hello dataset will be hey. So when I return hello dataset, as you already know, it will return the value it's associated with, which is hey. So now if I'm going to add plus Wized, it will return hey Wized. Now in this example, there is no space, so it will just say hey Wized. What I can do is in the Wized, I can add a little space, just like that, so it will return hey Wized. Or I can add quotes, space, quotes, plus, and then I would return the value of hello dataset, which is hey, because we defined that up here in the const. I will return a string that will contain just a space, and I'm merging this with the plus together, and I'm returning Wized, so it will say hey Wized. So that is cool. Let's do some math in here, in this code section. Now, let's say I would do 1 as a string plus 1 as a string. What will this return? This will return 11, because if I combine a string with a string using the plus, I'm merging text together to new text. This is text, not a number. So the plus operation here will take the first part of the text and the second part of the text, merge them together, and it will take 1 as text and 1 as text together. And if you add 1 as text and 1 as text together, you're going to get 1, 1 or 11, right? But if I'm going to remove the quote, so it's not a string, it's not text, and you will see the color changes. If it's green, it's a number. It will then do the calculation, and it will return 2, because it is not a string, it is not text. It will take this as a mathematical value of a number, you know, and it's pretty smart. It can do pretty cool equations. It can do 1 plus 8 plus 2. Now it will return 11. I can even use this return function to do a condition if I want to. So I could do like equals, equals, equals. This is how I can check for a value. Let's do 7. So the question is, does 1 plus 8 plus 2 equal 7? The response will be false. That is not true. This is how I can make conditionals, right? And then, if I do the right value, it will say true. This is how I get the true value. Pretty cool. So I can do this in here, and this is super simple. If you can do this, You can call yourself a JavaScript programmer right now. Junior JavaScript programmer. You know? At the end of the video, we may be already seniors. Who knows? So, I can do those cool things. I can do even cooler things. If this is true, I can add end. So I do two and signs. This is and. And then I can do 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now it will check, is this true? And is this true? Only if both are true, it will return a true. Now, if one of those is false, it will return a false because they both need to be true. Now, keep in mind, the first one is true, the second one is false. If I return this to an OR, which is like this straight line icon over your return key, it will return still a true because this is OR, and the OR is looking for, is this true? Or if this is not true, is this true? And if this is not true, is at least this one true? So if any of those is true, it will return a true. So this is the basic fundamentals of, let's call this one-line JavaScript. You know, we have the end, this will be false, I need to update this, and then this will be true. So this is one-line JavaScript, just so that you know. So what we can do with this one-line JavaScript, we can turn it into multiple lines. And the most interesting way of doing that will be with an if statement. So if you know how to write an if statement, you're a JavaScript programmer. So right now we're returning still true because that value is cached. But what we want to do is we want to return something if a specific condition is met. So let's just do a dummy example, and then we are going to go with the real example. Let's just do const, and let's just define some dummy data. Let's do const example equals 1. Now I can double check this in writing return example, and I can run this, and it will say 1. So we know this works. Now I can do if. I'm just going to type if, open bracket and close bracket, and now inside the brackets I need to write my condition. The condition is the thing that we just did in this one-line JavaScript. I can do example equals 1. So if example equals 1, I'm going to add a space, open close curly brace, and now since Wized will already add the second curly brace and have you in the middle, you're going to click return, and you're on the next line. And then I have to write return, or enter on your Windows. On Mac it's return, on Windows it's enter to go to the next line. I will write return, that's a 1. That's a 1. So now if I run this, it will say that's a 1. Because if example equals 1, it will return that's a 1. Just like it would be actually n1, because 1 starts with O. Or actually, that's a good question. If you write 1 as a number, does that grammatical thing apply? I don't know. But I think it does. So let's do that's n1, or is it interesting? I don't know. Okay. I think we just found a loophole in grammar. But here we go. This is the, we can return 1, for example. Or we can say 1 as an example here. So if example equals 1, we will return 1, the text of 1 that we return in here. Now, most of the times you need to add an else. If it's not 1, we want to do something else. So I'm just going to add a space and write else. Space, open close brackets, and let's hit return. Now I'm going to write, or enter, now I'm going to write return, because in here, whatever happens in this line, or in those lines if I want to add multiple ones, will be happening if it's not the number 1, right? If this equation is not true, we will have to return something else. And we can return that's not 1. Just like that. Now if I run this, it will still return 1, because it is 1. Now if I have this equal 11, for example, it will return that's not 1, because, it equals 11 up here. So when we define the const, we're defining the value of the example. So the example parameter will have a value of 11. So basically, whenever I type example in here, this is the placeholder for 11. It would be as I would be typing in 11. But the issue with typing in 11 is it's not dynamic. It's a static item. So we're going to use those placeholders, those data sets basically, to have those equal dynamic values, but they would be representing in this example 11. So we have if example equals 1, we will return 1. If else, meaning this condition is not true, so this one is not true, we will have the fallback to return that's not 1. Right now I'm returning that's not 1. But I can go even further. I can turn this if statement in an if-else statement. In order to do that, I'm just going to add after the else a space, and I'm going to write an if. And I'm going to start the whole thing like above here. I could even copy this thing, actually remove the if, and after the else paste. We call this an if-else statement. An if-else statement looks for another condition, meaning that if this example doesn't equal 1, we are going to look if else, if another condition is being met, and we can add a custom thing. So let's say if this equals 11, we are going to return 11. Right now, if I run this, it will return 11, because, the else if statement, else if, will return, is true. So therefore, it will return 11. So I can nest those. So I could do another one in here of another if-else statement. And what I like to do is I like to sometimes, break those onto multiple lines to make it a bit easier to understand what I'm doing here. Just like that. I think that looks easier to understand. Wonderful. So we have if example equals 1, we're going to return 1, and else if, meaning, okay, this didn't work. Let's check for the next thing. Okay, the next thing I'm checking for is, does example equal 11? Yes, it does. So now I'm going to return 11. So let's run this. Beautiful. We're going to return 11. Now what happens if I want to have this equal 12? Now it's not returning anything because we don't have the else statement anymore. So I'm going to go under the else if statement. I'm going to add a space, and I'm going to write else. And I'm going to do the same thing we had earlier. Open, close, square brackets. Let's go on the next line. Okay, beautiful. And let's write return. And I can say that's not. And let's do... Oh, we can do something cool. Let's just do it one step at a time. So I say that's not the number. Right? So now if I run this with being 12, so example equals 12, and now we're going to look, does example equal 1? Equal 1? No. So I'm not going to return 1. Okay, if this is falling through, let's go through the next one. Else if example equals 11. Does it equal 11? Heck no. Let's go with the next one. Okay, we don't have any else if statement anymore. Let's go with the else. Okay, the fallback will be that's not the number, and I will return that's not the number. Now if I run it, it will say that's not the number. Just like that. So what I can do even too is I can add some dynamic data in here because we already have the value of example. We know the value of example is 12. So what I can do I could actually return example. And then when, let's say this would be 11, it will return 11. And if this would be 1, it will return 1 because we have that checked in here. But if this is something else random, it will return the number, because if this falls through, it will return, the value that we have to find up here. So what I can do now, and I can add a string, some text, and I can write that's not, let's add a space, plus. I like to add a space when I do those things, so I don't have to add another plus and a space in quotes. So now, when I, have this equal 0, it will say that's not 1, and that doesn't make sense, because we don't know what, example should be in this case. So I am setting this as 1, but I'm saying that's not 1. So we want to do actually that's 1, or we can do like 1 plus is wrong, right? So now I already thought one step ahead because I was thinking of, can we return the right value? Because we don't know what the right value is in this example, right? Because we only know what's wrong, because we know, 1 and 11, we have some fallback. So what I can do is I can actually add, and we're going to add a little bit more complexity to this, and then after this, we're going to let go a little bit. Let's add const real value will equal, and the real value will be 7. So then I don't even need to hard code those numbers in here, because now they hinder us. I can just have does example equal the real value of 7, right? Now that whole thing falls through. Let's just remove the else if statement and just have an if else statement here. If else, boom. So I can look for does 0 equal the real value of 7? No. So if so, I will return wrong. And else, oh no, actually I will be returning right? And then if this is not true, I will return wrong. So in this example, we're going to look if example equals the real value that is 7, right? It will return right. And if it doesn't, it will return wrong. Right now that's wrong. But if I update this to 7, it will return right. Pretty cool. So what I can also do is, just so that you know, I can add comments. I'm adding // and this will not influence the code. If I add // I can add comments to this code. I can add right value so that I know this is the right value. And I can add comments, user input, for example. Just like that. So I can have those things going on, or input or something like this. I can base those on variables, or I can just have those equal variables, whatever you want. But this is really, those are the basics of, working with those things. Now, what I can go even fancier. I can turn real value into a list. The way I turn it into a list is adding a square bracket open and a square bracket close, right? So now I can add a comma and I can add 11. So now that whole thing will not work because we are inputting 7 and 7 is in this list, but it's still going wrong. So what we want to do is we want to look now, we want to change what we're doing here. We want to look not does example equal the real value, but we want to look for is example inside of the list that is represented as real value. The way we're going to do that is to look for .includes, just like that. Oh, actually it's the other way around. So I'm going to have my function in here, and I'm going to add real value, and I'm going to add dot includes open close, and I'm going to add example. So I'm going to type if real value, which is the array, so the list containing 7 and 11, and then I'm looking for, does this list of 7 and 11 include the example which equals 7? So this should return as right, and it does. Now, if this doesn't include it, so example equals 0, but there is no 0 in this list, it will return wrong. Now, if I add 0 to this list, it will return right, because it is in the list. There you have it. And that whole thing works for names too. I can have Lisa, and I can look, is Lisa as a string in here? Let's look at that. Lisa, and I probably want to spell it one-to-one. And it will return right, because Lisa is in the list. And if I were to do Lisa with lower caps, it will return wrong. So what I can do is, I just have to correct that, or I could base all my queries on whatever, This is probably more advanced for this video, but just so that you know that this also works for strings, just like that. But most of the time you already have the value, and then you would be working with something like a fuzzy search, which I made a video on, is in the video description, but we want to keep it as an easy example here. So then if I add 9, 9 is not in the list, it will return wrong. So this is really the basics that you need to know when working with those things. Now there is also another thing where I can use a filter, and the filter method is also pretty cool. This will probably require us to use objects in here, but let's actually use the filter inside our real life example. So right now, this was the preparation. We got the preparation going. Now we want to go with the real example here for the heading. And I want to base this actually right now on a computed variable to show the power of a computed variable. So right now, let's go into the data store here, and let's go to variables. And let's call this message, just like that. Because one issue that we may face, let's say we have this text equal, okay, congratulations, but for some reason we want to override it. Now, if we base the text on conditional logic, on code, we cannot override it. We can only override it if it is based on a variable by overriding the variable. And I'm going to show you later on what I mean by that. So in this example, I'm going to create a variable, and let's just return hey. And let's have this variable equal hey. Right now, this variable will equal hey, just like that. So now I'm going to my text, and I'm going to return hey. So from my variables up here, from the data store. So the cool thing is now it will say hey. So why this happens is because and this is the same thing I talked about you with, you remember example equals 1 and so on. My v.message in this example will equal hey. This is the same principle as before. And then when I go to my action in here and return my variable that is v.message, v for variable, it will return the value associated with this variable. Pretty cool. So I can also base my variable on dynamic data in this example. So I can go to get tasks, and I can also do that in the text field. But if you want to override it, it's recommended to do as a variable, or maybe even an object inside of a variable, but that's a different thing. I can write return, and let's take the first task, cancel Hulu. Now I'm returning cancel Hulu, and you're going to get surprised why this is not working. Now if I'm going to return, you will see that there is no value in here. Now why is there no value in here? I'm going to tell you after I show you how to fix it. If that is not working, click on compute it. This will make it a computed variable, and then it is working. Now the question is, why is it not working? Why, what's going on here? So we have to think about timing when we go with web development. This data here is only available after a certain time because the page gets loaded, this request gets processed, you see this flickering around because it loads, and then after the page has been loaded and the variable have been set ordinarily, it would then add the data. But the variable is not updating if it is not computed if this data gets added. So I need to make this a computed variable. The computed variable is looking if this data changes, that is it based on, like so, it will also update itself. So it has a reactivity to it, right? Because when the data changes, immediately the variable is recalculating itself and setting it as the new value. And then if the text field is based on the variable, it will calculate itself. But also if I base the text field in this example on any dynamic value, it will also do the same thing. It has nothing to do with JavaScript, but I still want to add that in here. If I go to the get tasks, and let's take any task in here, as you can see, that will also do itself. But when we want to base this text input on a variable, it needs to be a computed variable if that variable then is based on another item, because we're trying to stack those things together right now. So there you have it. So now inside of this computed variable, I'm just going to write code like we did before. I'm going to start with an if statement. So we're going to do if, open close brackets, and there we have it. We need to return something. I'm going to give it some space. We want to have an else if, so else if, and then we have that in here. And we're going to go to the new line and write return. And then we add the last else. So this is the frame. Once you got this frame going, you can do a lot of things in here. So we got the if else statement in here, and we have if, open close brackets. We are starting the object that will, run the logic that will happen when this is true. And then if this is not true, we have the else if as a fallback. Now, if that condition is true, but that one isn't here, we're going to return what's in here. And if that still is not true, we have the ultimate fallback of else. And you can stack them together how many times you want. But that is it in theory. So now we need to add our logic. So I want to look for, and before I'm going to add that logic, I want to do something else. So what we want to do is we want to look how many items that are true are in here. So like how many are checked? How many items do have checkbox true? So what I can do is I can use an operation called .length. And I want to introduce you to .length before I do anything else with the filters. Now, if I have my array, my list in here, the first item, as an example, and I'm going to run this, it will return the count, the number of items in my array, which is 6. Let's count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 items in here. We see we have .length. It will count the items. As an example, if I have an empty array, and let's add 1, 2, 3, and .length will return 3, because there are 3 items in that array. Just like that. So let's get back to the other array. .length, this is a beauty, is 6. I can even add a condition like if .length is greater than 7. So to check is .length greater than 7, and that is false. And if .length is below 7, that is true. And if .length equals, and you cannot do equals 7, because then you will set the length of 7. You need to equals 7, then you will have 7. Because why cannot we do equal instead of equals? Remember, we have the const hey equals hello, for example, and when I return hey, it will return hello, because hello is the value of the data set called hey. The equals is used to manipulate data. If I have hey, and hey would be empty, right? Let's say hey is an empty string, it will return an empty string, right? So then when I have hey equals 0, it will return, oh, I need to do const. That's a good question. I would do then const, right? I would then manipulate hey to equals 0, but that is not working. Oh, because it's a string. Okay, I need to, or no, why? Okay, that's only working for variables then. But ignore that. So what is basically happening, let's say I have the v.message variable, that may be a better example, because Wized adds the reactivity. If I have v.message equal 9, write this, like in here, and I were to run this, I would be setting v.message to 9. And if I have this equal hello, I'm overriding the value to hello. And if I'm setting this to thank you, it will be overriding this to thank you. So the equals is used to manipulate data, to set data. And the equals, if I now add the return, right, is to check, does this equals thank you? And this equals thank you, that is true. If I add an explanation, it will be false. Just so that you know that. But now, I think there was enough side information. Let's actually write the function right now. So we're going to go with return. We're going to take this, and we stopped at .length, just like that. So .length will give us the length. But we want the length of all the items that are, in this example, not true. Because what we want to do is we want to tell you, you have 2 tasks to do. So if the checkbox is true, it is done. Or actually, we could also look for false. Because, you know, we have some that are false. If I'm going to make, let's say, half of them false and go back in here, we see that some of them are false. So we want to look how many of those are false. We're going to use .length for that. But right now, with .length itself, we're only getting, you know, the number of items. So we need to use the filter and .length in combination to get the length of a reduced array that only returns the results that are false. And I know that was a lot of JavaScript language, but I'm going to simplify that for you. So in JavaScript, we have something .filter. So what I can write after, you know, returning this data, I can write .filter. Oh, .filter, just like that. Now, .filter itself will do nothing. It will just not run this. So I need to add open close brackets, and I'm just going to type object, so obj, and I'm going to have equals is great. Oh, equals is great. Then, here you go. And then I'm going to add object. So I'm targeting the object here because it's an array of objects. Dot, and I'm going to write checkbox. And then I add my equation in here. Oh, I typed after here. Dot checkbox. Boom. And then I'm going to have equals false. Now I have that, and boom, we have that in here. We have filter, and I'm just looking on my phone because I have this written down here just to make sure that it's all working, because the filter one is probably the one that you're never going to use. But just so that we have it in here, that should be, oh, equals false. I made that mistake too. Look at that. So now, because I make a mistake, sometimes it will not work precisely. So I should be returning this result. And as you can see, I am returning only the ones that are false. Beautiful. Look at that. So that one is false, and that one is false, and those are false, right? So for some reason, it is not returning it in my Wized oh, now it is. Okay, it didn't work before. I was clicking it, it just wasn't returning. I got scared that something just broke with my code. But okay, it works. Beautiful. So now, again, let's go over this. This is the data. So we're looking at this array. I'm going to add dot filter, which will filter it. And I'm going to take object. So because we have an array of objects, right? You see those by those little squiggly things, like those curly braces. Those are objects. So I'm just going to type object and then obj and dot checkbox, because I'm looking for, as you can see, dot checkbox. So I have my object in here, and then I have dot checkbox in the object. So I'm going to write dot filter. We're going to open close this because it's a function. Dot filter is a function, open close brackets. And then in here, we're going to look for objects. And the object we're looking for is object, but we don't want to look at the whole object. We need to look only at the checkbox value, which is true, right? So I can have object dot checkbox equals false. Excuse me, it's false. So object dot checkbox should be false. If it is true, we're not going to include it in our filter. So then we're only going to return the ones that are false. Now, if I have this equal 0, I'm not returning anything because none of them have this set as 0. And if I do true, I'm only returning the ones that are true, as you can see here. That is true. If I add false, it will only include the ones that are false, right? And I could have, this technically equal false, which doesn't make any sense because it's filtering. So it needs to equal false, because then in here I'm doing like the conditional check. It's like a little equation to see if it's true or false. So just to summarize, dot filter, and then in here I have my function. I'm going to look for the object, and I'm specifying it object dot checkbox, because I want to look on the checkbox value here, because we have checkbox false, checkbox false, checkbox false, and then checkbox true. So I only want to return the objects because, you see, this is the object here at 4. This is the object here. And now here we have the breakdown of the object because it has ID, and it has created that, and it has a task, and I have, the breakdown of task, and then it has checkbox true, and I have the breakdown of checkbox true. So we want to look for dot checkbox because this will target it. And why do we do this? Because we're doing like a little loop. We're just looping through all of them and figuring out which one does dot checkbox equals false. So it's not true, and we're only getting the ones that are not done yet. So now I can combine this. After the brace, I can do dot length, because as you know, if I were not to add dot length, we are returning an array that is about only half the size of the original list, as you can see right here. I'm only going to return like half of it because I'm only returning the ones that are false. So I can add dot length on here to get the length of the ones that are, that are not being done yet, right? And when I update this, it will update as well. So now we got this working. So now we want to start introducing some logic here. So I want to do, and let's just define a const here. I'm going to write const. Let's do to do count equals, and this will have this equation. So now when I return to do count, boom, it will equal 0 because, they're all done. But now it will return 4. So to do count will now equal the result of this equation in here. And when I return it, it will give me the value that is associated to. We already did that. So now I can start writing my if statement. And why do we do this? It's just that I don't have such a big thing in my conditions that makes it a little bit cleaner when I write the code. So now I'm going to write if. We have to open close brackets, and I'm writing if to do count, and let's go with equals 0. Then open close, return congratulations. Oh, congratulations. Let's see if I can add an emoji in here. Oh, yeah, I can. I just added it on the wrong line, but I can add an emoji. Boom. So now I'm returning. I'm not, because it's not 0. But let's do this. The moment the tasks are 0, it will say congratulations with the emoji. So now we need to have the backup, and we need to have an else if. So if they are all done, we have congratulations. Now, if one is still to do, or any number is still to do, so if there are some still remaining, we want to say, you have so and so many done. So what I want to do is I can do, let's do an else statement in here, and then we're going to, actually I can do else if, and I can do open close, and I can go to do count, and if to do count is greater than 0, just like that, I can return, here you go, I can return, let's do the number and then still to do. So let's take the to do count, which we defined up here from this equation. Let's add this down here, plus quote space, let's do remaining. Boom. So now let's try this. Let's reload. Now it will say 2 remaining, 1 remaining. Congratulations. Just like this. And then it will say 1 remaining, 2 remaining, 3 remaining, 4, 5, 6. Now I want to do something, and this is cool. We got this working. And when they are all done, it will say congratulations. Now we can add more complexity, and this is what I want to do too in here, because we want to add cool logic. Because when all of them, when nothing is done, I don't want to say 6 remaining. I want to say you haven't even started yet. I want to give them like a little motivation. So what I can do is I want to add a little bit of a logic on here. So the way I want to do that, I want to restructure this a little bit. So I want to turn this into an else statement. Just like, and then remove this condition here. And I want, this remaining to be my backup. And I want the other thing to be my, and we have to close this. And I want the other thing to be, it's already closed here. So we need to change this a little bit. So I'm going to copy this one and turn this into an else statement, just like that. Boom. So I want to do an if-else for a different thing. So I'm thinking of, and let's restructure this a little bit. Boom. So now we still have our backup, right? So if-else, and let's define a condition. So let me think about this. How are we going to do this best? Right now, we have the remaining count as a backup if everything fails. Now, one thing I want to look for potentially is how many tasks are successful. And if the success, if I think a good start is to look for how many tasks are successful. Let's go for true, right? And then let's do done count. So we have to do count and done count. And if the to do count, if the to do count equals the length of the itself. Okay, this is a good idea. So we want to look on this array. This is 6. And if the to do will equal 6 too, we want to say, you haven't started even anything. So this is advanced logic. Bear with me. I want to do all tasks, right? And let's just return all tasks. Just like that. Now, oh, because I have some code under here, let's just get rid of that for now. Right now, I'm returning all tasks, right? Which is not really true. So let's look into that later on. So we have the data.filter.length. So let's just do it a little bit. Let's just, first of all, return again the data.length in here. And when we do this, like this, I'm going to get 6. So let's do a const for all tasks, just like that, equals the length. And when I return all tasks, it will return 6, just like that. So all tasks will equal 6. So now, if, let's test this with a return statement. So if to-do count equals all tasks, which is true because, we didn't do anything. So this is how we can test this. If I add a return and then just, define some const up here and try that out, and I can test the logic I want to then implement in my conditional statement. So this is true. So meaning, this will mean you didn't do anything. So this will check if you didn't do anything, right? And I recommend you get a piece of paper next to you or a mind map to sketch out that logic. That will really help, because most of the time it's not the programming that's the complicated thing. It's how to think about it, how to, how to map the points together, if this, then that. It's the logical part. So that's why I'm thinking here sometime, because, it's not the code that's the tough thing. It's the logic. But you have that in Zapier too. Like otherwise, you have your Zap loopity-doop 5,000 times and you get a big invoice, which you don't get with Wized, right? Because it all happens client-side, which is a big benefit. But here we go. So you didn't do any task. That is true. Now, if I do one task, it will return false because, I did some tasks. So now let's introduce the code we had earlier. And let's actually take this condition that we tested here in the return statement, and let's get rid of the whole line, right? Let's get that code back in. And if else, I add this in here. I want to return you didn't do anything. Just like that. You didn't do anything. Boom. Okay, let's figure out what we did wrong here. Oh yeah, we closed this. So closed this one, we opened this one. Okay, let's go over this again. It looks like I made a little mistake somewhere. So we have if, we open and close that in here. Boom. Then if else, oh, it's else if, shit. Okay, sorry. It's else if, not if else. That was my mistake. I'm so sorry. So we have if to-do count equals 0, meaning if all of those tasks are done, we're going to return congratulations. Now else first, if the to-do count, meaning the tasks that need to be done, is the same as equals the count of all the available tasks. Meaning, if I have 6 tasks to do, and the tasks that need to be done are 6, I have an issue, because then that means I haven't done any task yet. So if that is, we're going to say you didn't do anything. And then, if this falls back, meaning I did some tasks, it's not all done yet, but, I did something at least in here. I'm going to return to-do count, which is the count of the ones that we did based on this filter defined up here, plus the text of remaining. Let's do this. Yeah, let's just have this like this. And now it will say 5 remaining because we have 1 checked. And now it will say 4 remaining. And then when we are done, it will say, congratulations, you are done. And then, if I'm a little bit lazy and nothing is done, it should say, maybe we're going to refresh this. It should say you didn't do anything. Okay, I needed to refresh. So now when I do 1, it will say 5 remaining. If I uncheck this, it will say you didn't do anything. Like, what's going on? And now if we check that, it will say 5 remaining, 4 remaining, 3 remaining, 2 remaining, 1 remaining. Congratulations, you are done. So this is how we're going to add this wonderful things of little logic on top of it, how we're going to use if and else if in our Wized functions. And I could technically also take this code and, just simply add it in the text field. I can save myself a variable. And I would just simply add that in here. That will work too, as you can see. Now, one downside is maybe I want to run a condition that when I click on it, it will turn it into only emojis. Now, I don't have any use case for this, and I don't know in any real world example where this would be usable, but we never know. So when I unclick, I can set and update a variable. So what I can do is I can take my v.message and return a lot of emojis. Like, let's do this one. This looks like I did something wrong. Just like that. So now, as you can see, if I would be clicking on this heading, event, click, set variable, v.message, when I click on this one here, it will update the message to the emoji. Hey, that is cool. They even add emojis in here in Wized. Like, you don't have this in the code editor, but it will not update this to an emoji, right? Because I cannot update the text field from a different action. If I want to update the text field from a different action, I need to base it on a variable because I can update the variable. And as you can see, we're now returning the emojis because they are based on the variable, and I can only update the variable in an action. I cannot update the content of a text field in an action. It needs to be based on a variable. So if that text field is based on v.message, right? The moment v.message changes, which is possible, the text field changes too, because the variable changed. But if I have an action and I say, I want to click on this, and if I click on this, I want to change the content, we cannot do that because we cannot access, this is not linked to a dynamic field. So we need to base this to a dynamic field, which is a variable, and then when I click on it, we can update it. So if I reload this, now, I cut it out the code. So we want to add that code back in here and reload. So let's reload. We see congratulations. When I click on it, it will update it to the emoji. And now, if I do again things, it will update it again. And now when I click on it again, it will update it to the emoji. Why will it even do it again? Because we have a computed variable. Let's look into the functionality of this a little bit more. So I have my congratulations because they are all done, right? We have that defined in here. To do count equals 0. So we're going to get congratulations. Now, I have my action in here that is also doing on event click set variable v.message will equal, the emoji. So when I click on here, it will override v.message. So when I do a click event, as you can see right in here, keep an eye on the v.message, it will override it to the emoji. But the code in here is still running in the variable. So then, when anything happens that is related to the code in the variable, it will override the override that happened in an action. So when I buy the milk, it will now override the emoji again based on the code that is defined in here. And when I do the click action defined in the action, down here, it will override what happened in the computed variable again to have this equal the emoji. Just like that. And then again, if the code, any of this code conditions in here, because since it's computed, it's fully reactive, if any dependency in here changes, it will override this again, and so on. And doing some things like this is really a pain in JavaScript, because you have to look, is something happening? Like, what's going on? No, nothing is happening. Okay, your front end is on constant stress all the time. And Wized is making this so easy. It is as easy as just, checking a checkbox. And let's do this not computed. We're not even to get anything, because we base this on a condition. So this computed variable is a must if you're writing any code in a variable. Meaning if you want to have a dynamic value that is based on multiple dynamic fields set inside of a text, a computed variable, as of right now, is the best solution to do that. And if you click on it, you can even override the code, but you're not losing the functionality that you have in the variable. Meaning if you do any code, so think of it like this. Right now, it equals 0, so we get congratulations. If this will not equal 0 anymore, and, it will not, and we still have more done than, nothing, it will then fall back to else. So if any of these conditions is evaluated like this, it will then automatically run this function and update the variable. And by updating the variable in real time, since we have the set text based on the variable in here, immediately update the text input. And this is amazing because this is real-time reactivity in a web application in Wized, which Wized is super fast. It's fully reactive. As you can see, it works amazing. You can build completely scalable web applications with it that just work immediately. Like, look at that. I'm clicking on this checkbox. The moment it's clicked, it's doing its magic, like immediately. Like, look at the 4. Like, I click on it, it's like, it's as even before I click, it's already updating it, even though, that wouldn't be good. But, it is super fast. We're talking about seconds, like milliseconds, like nanoseconds. It's super fast and it's fully reactive. Even if I override functionality caused by it with different functionality from actions, Wized is thinking for you to maintain the original functionality. Then if I evaluate that condition again, it will override it again. So pretty cool what we can do with Wized. I know this was maybe a little bit more than beginner JavaScript session, but I think it's actually beginner JavaScript. But, there are so many great functionalities, and we haven't even touched the surface of what Wized can do. It can go even as far as building native mobile apps if you plug it in with extensions like Despia and all of that. So it's pretty cool. Wized is super lightweight, scalable, and, lightning fast. Sometimes it's a little bit too fast. That's why it feels a little bit glitchy if you don't add the right CSS transitions that add a delay, because it's super fast, which is a good thing. But sometimes for designers it's a bad thing. So you can add some transitions using CSS to make things a little bit lighter, to make them, smoother coming in, not just like, boom, I'm done. But, it's a good thing. You can artificially make Wized a little bit slower, at least make it appear it's a little bit slower than it is, using CSS to, make those a little bit more gradual and more subtle. But, this is, I think, the whole basic foundation that you need to know to start writing amazing JavaScript in Wized. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all your time. I really appreciate that, and I hope that you're going to write a lot of exciting JavaScript. Write down in the comments, like, have you already written JavaScript in Wized? Is this your first time? Is this your second time? Did this help you? Or do you want to watch any other video for beginners, for advanced, for intermediates, and so on? Just give me your feedback. I'm here to help you day and night all the time in the comment section. So please let me know. And yeah, see you tomorrow. And again, thank you so much for all your support. Thank you so much for watching. This really means the world to me. And just thank you for all your support. Also, thank you to the Wiz team for always helping me, for always being so responsive, answering my dozens of emails they get every day. I'm spamming them full. Sorry. But, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.